Hello and welcome to this new video. In the previous video, we integrated the player data storage service into the game and we tested an example of saving and restoring the game from the cloud. In this video, we will discover the subject of title data. The title data is a service allowing the game developer to load files used for his game and which will be downloadable by clients. The difference between player data and title data is that player data is a service allowing a player to write and read his own files on the cloud, while title data is a service allowing the developer to expose files common to all players such as maps to download or game resources that are common to all players. We can see that on the client side, the title data service only allows the player to download files and therefore he cannot modify or write files. To integrate this service into the game, I will show you via a useful example. If you remember the player progress section, we had a limitation concerning obtaining the stats and leaderboard names in order to query them, so we hard-coded these names via arrays. I also told you that you must update your game each time these arrays are modified or use a third-party API that allows the client to obtain this information to avoid updating the game. So in this video I want to use the title data service to solve this problem. So I want to show you how to use this service to provide the stats and leaderboard names to the client without needing to hard code these names and thus update the game each time a stat and a leaderboard are added. In your dev portal, go to the title storage section. This is where you have to upload your game files. The player does not have the right to modify or add files in the title storage. He can only use them by downloading them. To add a file, click on the Add File button. Each time you add a file, EOS asks you to provide an encryption key to encrypt and decrypt the file. You can use the key you like. In this video, I want to use the encryption key that I used in the client artifacts. You can download it as a TXT file to keep it on your local machine. You must define a file name. The file name there has nothing to do with the real name of the file to upload. On the other hand, it will be this name to use in the game client when downloading. Each time you add a file, you must define a tag. The title data files will be categorized by tags. You must then define the list of your tags in the project settings. Once the tag is defined, add it in the EOS plugin configuration in your project settings. There you have to add all your tags. You can change the title storage read chunk length. This is the chunk size used when reading a title file. I want to use the default value 0. There you have to upload the file. In the File with Override section, you can upload multiple versions of the default file, and you can define the role of the user or client who can override the default file. I will not use overrides because we cannot interact with them via the online services of Unreal Engine, so it is up to the developer to use the API provided by EOS to implement a script external to the game. I now want to create the file to upload, so it will be a file that will contain the names of the stats and leaderboards of the game. I will define them in a JSON file, because we can use the JSON plugin of Unreal Engine to read this file once downloaded by the client. It is much simpler than reading a text file, which will therefore be a string to parse. Use your own IDE to add this JSON file. For me, I use Visual Studio Code. You must respect the JSON syntax, so the content of the file must be between two curly brackets. The first key to define is the stats. Its value will therefore be a list of stat names. Go to the stats section of the dev portal to copy the names of the stats. For me, I only have one stat for now. To add more stat names, just separate them with commas. The second key to set is the leaderboards. Its value is a list of leaderboard names. Once finished, save the file. Go to the title storage section to add this file. Once uploaded, click Save and Close. Here we have a new file with the title data tag. Go to your game instance. The download of this file must be done after the player authentication because we must obtain the information before the stats and leaderboard query script is started. Search for title data to get all the features offered by the plugin regarding title storage. Basically, the title interface allows you to download files and delete them locally. There is also a delegate that can be triggered by the backend regarding the title storage. This delegate can inform the client of the download progress. This is useful if you want to display a progress bar to the player when downloading a large file. To read a file, you must first load all the names of the existing remote files. This is done via the task load OSS title data files. This task takes as a parameter a structure indicating to the backend the quantity of files to load. In other words, from which page to which page this task must load files. Once the task is executed, connect the task read OSS title data file to read a file from the list of file names returned. We must check that the file we want to read already exists in the list of file names returned. Like the player data storage, the title storage interface treats the contents of a file as a bytes array, so we must save this file as a JSON file locally to be able to treat it. Unreal Engine does not offer any blueprint node to save a bytes array to a file. Easy OSS Plugin offers this functionality. Because we are going to work with a JSON file, we must first activate the necessary plugins. So go to Edit Plugins, then search for the word JSON, then activate these 3 plugins. Once finished, restart the editor. If you now search for the word JSON, then you will find the nodes that you can use to work with JSON content. Call the node load JSON from file, because we want to process JSON content from a local JSON file. You can call node load JSON from string if your JSON content is string formatted. You need to provide this node with the path of the JSON file to load. Under the Easy OSS Utilities category, you have the Write Bytes Array to File node. This node allows you to write a bytes array to a local file. This node takes as parameters the bytes array to write, the absolute path of the file to write, and a boolean specifying whether this writing is an append of an existing file or a replace of all the contents of the file. To be able to work with the paths, Easy OSS offers you the node get project related folders, which returns you a structure containing all the useful paths of your project. I want to write the file to the saved folder of the project. We must add to this path the name of the file to write. Note that this structure returns the paths with a slash at the end, so we must not add it before the name of the file to write. We must add .json as the extension of the file to write because we are sure that the binary content we read represents a JSON file. Similarly, if you download a text file, for example, you must add .txt at the end of the file name in this case. Once the file is written, we must load this file to convert it to a JSON object. To get the values of the keys, you have to use the node get field. The first field name is therefore the name of the stats key. This node returns the key value as a wildcard type, so it's up to you to convert it. We know that the value is a list of strings, so we will define the value as a list of strings. Add a variable of type string array which represents the list of stat names. Set its value by connecting it to the value returned by the node. We will do the same for the leaderboard's key. Add the variable representing the list of leaderboard names. Add a custom event that is used to execute this implementation. Call this custom event once the user is authenticated. For test purpose, I will display the obtained values on the screen.
Launch a client.
And there you have it. Once the client is authenticated, the stats and leaderboards names are read from the title data storage. Go to the saved folder. You should see the JSON file written after downloading from the title storage. In the game instance interface, we must add the two functions which are used respectively to return the list of stats and leaderboards. We will use these two functions when querying stats and leaderboards. Implement these two functions by connecting the corresponding variables. Now go to the Player Stats widget to replace the hard-coded stat names with those obtained via title storage. In the event construct, before launching the timer that query the stats, call the game instance interface function to get the list of stat names. Update the stat names variable according to the list returned by the game instance. Go to the Player Leaderboards widget to do the same. We are missing information regarding the leaderboards. It is the related stat, so we must modify our JSON file to take it into account. The value of the leaderboard's key will therefore be a list of objects, while each object represents a leaderboard. An object must therefore contain a key representing the name of the leaderboard and a key representing the related stat. This must necessarily lead to a change in the type of the value returned when we read the value of the leaderboard's key. We will see how to adapt it. We will add a third key which represents the sorted column, which in our case is the stat name. We can add a fourth key which represents the data type. I will not use it because all our stats have the same data type, which is an int 32. The value of our key is now a structure representing a leaderboard. To be able to convert it into a blueprint type, we must add this structure. Add a blueprint structure representing the leaderboard structure that we defined in the JSON file. Change the type of the leaderboard's variable to be an array of this structure. Change the return type of the interface function to fit with this change. Go to the dev portal to replace the existing file with the new version. Launch a client to check for download of the new version of the file. There you go, everything is good. In the Player Leaderboards widget, add the event construct. From the game instance, get the list of leaderboard structures. We need to change the readObject variable to be a list of red objects. We will update this list according to the returned leaderboards. Our current implementation allows us to read a single leaderboard. I will not query all the leaderboards of the game. I want to take the leaderboard at index 0. I let you adapt the code to query each leaderboard. Launch a client to verify the implementation. And there you have it. We managed to query the stats while avoiding hard coding the names of the stats. Same for leaderboards, except that the current implementation only queries the leaderboard at index 0 of the list. Now assuming your game is in production, and you are going to add a new stat, for example a stat that represents the number of crouches performed by the player, just add it to the JSON file and then upload the new version of the file. You can also add a leaderboard linked to this new stat. Upload the new version of the file. One last thing to fix. You have to add a short delay before getting the info from the game instance to be sure that the latent task which downloads the file has finished its execution. Launch a client. And there you have it, the new crouch stat has been queried. For the leaderboards, we will always have only one leaderboard because we only query the first leaderboard returned. Here is what needed to be demonstrated. We used the title storage service to resolve the limitations of the stats and leaderboards interfaces. It is useful to clear the game client cache after each download of a file. This is done via the No Delete OSS title cache. Same. Clear the cache of the downloaded file. The last thing to do is to assign the delegate that fires when a title file reading progresses. This is useful to display the progress in the UI. Here I just want to display the number of bytes read on the screen. To test this delegate, launch a client. And there you have it. We have the number of bytes read, which is equal to the size of the file because we are reading a small file. Note that if you are reading large files, the read task will take its time before completing. This applies to title storage and player data storage. That's all for this video. See you in the next one.